Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Charles.
I appeared to be on mute initially. I can only apologise. And good evening, Anthony. Welcome Sunday evening as ever, Graham. And I am Charles Hutchinson.
Anthony's the producer, by the way. If anybody wonders who Anthony is, Anthony produces the podcast.
Is indeed. And this is the voice of Graham Chalmers, or rather, that was the voice of Graham Chalmers. This is the voice of Charles Hutchinson, co-host of Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Now, long-standing podcast with listeners all over the world. But above all, we focus, of course, on the worlds of Harrogate, York, Yorkshire, this world, and maybe any other world.
We're not really bound by any limits.
No.
We know a lot, we do a lot, we see a lot, we hear a lot, we talk a lot. We cover whatever we actually know about or whatever really takes our interest. We don't cover anything as a matter of rote.
No, absolutely. And actually, I think this week's discussion points are suitably varied. Let us start, Graham, with one from you, actually, which is bringing it all back home, how Joan Didion's observations in her 1983 essay, Salvador, on America's involvement in the Civil War in El Salvador, now apply to the mainstream of the Western world. A heavyweight subject to start with, Graham, but of course resonance always comes back whenever one looks to history, one looks to past books, one looks to essays, and we refract our world through them, and often shaking our heads with frustration at how the world continues to be.
Yeah, well, Didion was one of the great writers, though, in terms of like being a journalist.
Yes.
She was in a class of her own, and I read a lot of her stuff, her collections of essays from the 60s, like Selection Towards Bethlehem and the White Album. In the early 90s, when I decided I was going to be a really good music writer in a sort of new journalism style. So I was reading stuff by Tom Wolfe, Hunter S. Thompson, Truman Capote, Joan Didion, and then music critics like Lester Bangs, Nick Kent, Charles Shar Murray, Grail Marcus, over and over and over again until I sort of like subsumed all the styles. And Didion was, although all those writers evidenced a first-person approach and an almost novelistic style of writing, albeit with facts rather than lots of fiction, Didion was different to all the rest of them because almost everybody else, when they wrote about real things but in the first person, obviously liked writing about themselves. They made themselves look funny or brave or heroic. And Didion was totally cool, totally dry, totally sparse, and you could tell she couldn't care less if the reader liked her personally or not. This was not what it was about. She was trying to present what she thought was reality and the truth in a way which made the reader understand it without being told what to think. And that's what makes Didion such a great writer.
So, in other words, not gonzoid.
Well, the only gonzo thing about Didion was it was first person. But apart from that, she had nothing in common with Hunter S. Thompson whatsoever. Except she wrote at the same time, sometimes about the same subjects.
Also, Graham, in that list that you've read out there, one thing that's very noticeable, Joan amongst a world of Joes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, maybe even almost the 80s, there were very few famous, great journalistic writers who were women, because the world was a male-dominated place in every way at that point.
I mean, we've had films about Lee Miller, for example. Has Joan Didion been the subject of a film? Forgive me if I don't know.
No, it's been quite hard to do it because she's not a terribly likable person and quite, came across as quite cold. So you'd have to treat it really trickily. I don't know how you'd make it a, Bob Dylan No Direction Home film, or rather the Complete Unknown film. It makes Dylan look a cool, attractive rebel. You'd be very hard pressed to turn Joan Didion into a likable caricature.
I mean, again, is there enough information for a documentary? Is there enough footage available?
Well, there have been documentaries already, but in terms of fiction, I mean, she wrote the brilliant book, The Year of Magical Thinking, after the death of her husband, and then her daughter also got ill. So that she knew personal tragedy in her life. So you could do a film, definitely. If you did a film about Truman Capote, and there have been several films about Truman Capote, you could do a film about Joan Didion. It'd have to be quite a serious film. There's no way you could glitz and glam it up.
I mean, there's been obviously a film, Truman Capote, as you say. Andy Warhol, there's been films about. It's you mentioned earlier Hunter S. Thompson, of course, a film about. So there is a kind of history of this, Graham.
Well, she comes from a great era of the counterculture where journalists had to write about things that had been brought up by the counterculture. The whole world got more interesting and more honest in the 60s and 70s in a way that it isn't now, because honesty is like everybody's fighting for their turf, and everybody's like competitive. So honesty is quite difficult when everybody's looking after themselves.
What does
So
that say,
times
Graham,
moved on.
about what does that say about editors then? Editors then in the
Same
fifties,
thing.
sixties, and
We're a
seventies.
different game. It's a different world. Therefore, journalism is a different game. And what people think is reasonable in terms of journalism has changed in the last 50 years because the world has changed. And you can knock it, you can't knock it. But if you read Evelyn Waugh's Scoop written in the 30s about journalism,
Yes.
I mean, that used to sound totally ridiculous because it's all based on cynical journalists lying and the world being chaos full of like corrupt people and dictatorships and journalists all looking after themselves and the owners being unscrupulous and up to the necks in their own self-interest in politics. And when I first read Scoop, I thought that's just ridiculous. But if you read Scoop, it now makes some sense again because the world has gone back to the world of Scoop.
Where does it leave cutting edge journalists then? What do they do? Where do they go?
I'm sure the internet is full of cutting edge journalists, but they don't have a mainstream audience.
No, that's the difference. Audience, that's the difference.
The mainstream audience for honest, exceedingly well written journalism, full of context and understanding and realism, is faded pretty badly. But Salvador is a great book from 1983. It's less than 100 pages, so I read it on the train going to that exhibition that Christmas's Magna Carta band were featured in. And what struck me wasn't just how great the writing was, because Joan doesn't tell you what to think. She tries to avoid passion. She even tries to avoid personal opinion. She tries to present only what she sees for herself or has researched for herself or knows to be true. But as she's like presenting this in a plain, cool, intelligent fashion, it all starts adding up to a picture. In Salvador, which was she wrote after visiting El Salvador during the Civil War, when right-wing fascists were fighting a war with supposedly communism, but basically with anybody who wasn't a right-wing fascist. Don't know if that reminds you of anything right now. Well, when she's writing that in response to that, you know that she thinks this is all wrong, that the American government's wrong, that the right-wing government's wrong, that it's just cruel, barbarous, horrible dictatorship, fascism in action in a small Central American country. But she doesn't tell you that. She lets you make your own mind up by presenting what she has seen for herself and knows to be true. But by the end, it's like all the information builds up, and eventually you can tell what she thinks, even though she never actually says in a sentence what she thinks. And you can tell she thinks the whole thing stinks, including not only the US government, but how journalists back in the USA on respectable papers like the Washington Post, how they're covering it, because they're covering it in a lying, deceitful way, because that's how the US government is presenting the Civil War in El Salvador, in a lying, deceitful way. And again, does that strike you as relevant to issues happening right now in the world and in Britain and in America and in the Middle East? It's exactly the same stuff. Really bad things happen in the worst fashion when the good guys don't let the truth get in the way of doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I can't think of an equivalent writer now. I mean, I would say that with coverage from Gaza and from Israel and from Syria and from Ukraine or whatever, we see within television journalism, I think we still have standards of trying to state fact rather than opinion. And yes, there are documentaries that maybe take more of a slant. I still think within that form of media, there's some heavyweight reporting goes on that we trust.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. The stuff that has the most truth has the smallest audience. The stuff that has the most audience is the stuff that's presented in a partial fashion for political reasons, because this is what the governments want to be presented, and the media falls in line on certain issues. So it's not that the facts aren't there, it's that they're only giving you certain facts. They're giving you a partial story based on presenting certain facts which suit the viewpoints of the perpetrators and the governments involved with letting these perpetrators perpetrate what they're perpetrating, to use too many P's.
You would be suggesting, Graham, that major companies are mouthpieces.
Well, they always have been, but the difference is that there used to be mouthpieces about things that were marginal to our own futures and our own lives and our own country. Now they're mouthpieces for issues which are right on our doorstep. I mean, El Salvador was a tiny Central American country, which really didn't matter to anybody in the whole of the West. But Israel and Middle East really mattered to the West.
Yes.
You know, the immigration issue in Britain and across the rest of the world, that matters on the streets of Britain, because it's not just about the plight of migrants or how migrants are treated. It's about the fact that issue is allowing people who are right-wing and semi-violent in general to become major players in our domestic political system. That's what's changed. It used to, the partial presentation of the truth used to happen in areas that didn't really matter that much. Now these are areas that really matter, and we're still getting the partial version of the truth.
How can that change?
Because of the competition. All news agencies now are facing fierce competition for audiences because of the internet, social media, phones, iPads, competing for advertising. They're owned by big companies or by people who've got no interest in being anything except right-wing themselves. It's just back to the 1930s, like Beaverbrook and Randolph Hearst, when they were so influential in a malign fashion on politics in America and Britain. It's a high-tech digital version of that.
Reason to be depressed, it seems to me, Graham.
Well, yeah, but because it's happened before, then changed. I mean, the 30s ended and something different came along. Something much better.
It took a war to come along to change things.
Well, yeah, that's the sad part. But you can never say this is how it's going to be forever. And in that way, there is hope. I don't see that as. I'm not negative or hopeful. I think at some point it will change. The only question is how far we have to go down into the hole before we do change.
Well, I don't think we're at the bottom yet, Graham.
Well, you may be right. But here's a line that works for today's politics in the West, in America and Britain, and how the Middle East happens.
Yeah.
This is from Joan Didion's Salvador, which was originally mostly published in the New York Review of Books.
Yeah.
And it's on Granta Press. It was published again in paperback in 2019. So I'll just read this not that long passage from Salvador by Joan Didion. It was certainly possible to describe some members of the opposition, as Dean Hinton, an American official, had, as out-and-out Marxists, but it was equally possible to describe other members of the opposition, as the embassy had at the inception of the new government in April of 1980, as a broad-based coalition of moderate and centre-left groups. The right in El Salvador never made this distinction. To the right, anyone in the opposition was a communist. Along with most of the American press, the Catholic Church, and as time went by, all Salvadorian citizens not of the right. In other words, there remained a certain ambiguity about political terms as they were understood in the United States and in El Salvador, where left may mean, in the beginning, only a resistance to seeing one's family killed or disappeared. Then it comes eventually to mean something else, maybe to the extent that the United States has supported increasing polarization in El Salvador, the bed we made ourselves. So you can see that what happened in a trumped-up little nothing banana republic in Central America in the early 1980s, in the way that politics happened and the US government behaved and the way the media behaved. And you can see that's all playing out now, not in some little state in Central America. It's happening right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there we go, Graham. I think that's a pretty depressing start, but the great thing is we as writers celebrate writers that go out, go on the edge, live on the edge, write on the edge. They make the difference. History shows them as being the significant voices, and we must always cherish the opportunity to write, and that is the most frightening prospect. is
Where is
control
George Orwell now?
is
Where's
control of
today's
that.
George Orwell?
Well,
There aren't any.
absolutely. It's the control of that writing that is perhaps the thing that's beginning to frighten people.
Anyway, I've got something light-hearted. I got
Oh,
interruption.
goodness for that.
Light-hearted
Let's interrupt
interruption.
with a bit of
Here we
joy,
go.
Graham. Go.
Well, you know, Mike Batt wrote all the music for the Wombles
Yeah.
in the 1970s and 80s, which I quite liked the Wombles music. It wasn't that bad. I mean, it was children's stuff, but I thought it was pretty good. Anyway, guess what Mike Batt's doing now?
I don't think he's relaunching the Wombles.
No, something entirely different. He's composing a new symphony based on Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Of course he is.
Yeah, he's going to record it with the London Symphony Orchestra. Who would have thought from Remember You're a Womble and Wombling Free to a symphony about Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Underground, overground.
Exactly, yeah, right.
Well, that's interesting that he's doing that. Not an easy subject to write about.
Well, not many laughs.
Not at the moment, certainly not. Blimey. Well, anyway, we look forward to that. Sounds like a bit of a batty idea. Ho, ho. So, Graham, we're going to be heading off to Edinburgh really quite soon now. We're going up there on the 13th. We'll be there till the 20th. We're going to be there for all the film festival. First time we've done the complete thing for quite some time. Looking forward to that. So just give us an update, Graham, if you would, for the previewing of this event running from the 14th.
I get the distinct
bigger scale than
impression.
last year. That's the first thing, isn't it? It is a bigger.
I get the distinct impression that having been in doldrums for financial reasons,
yes,
and now being revived, and the film house has been refurbished and renovated and is reopened for the film festival in Edinburgh. I get a distinct impression just from the emails I'm receiving and some of the press I'm reading up in Scotland that this year's Edinburgh International Film Festival is going to be the most busy, bustling, vibrant, brilliant one they've had at least for the last 7 years, if not. It feels like it's going to be really good. They've got loads of great guests coming up for talks like Jeremy Thomas, the great British producer.
Yeah.
Ben Wheatley, director of The Kill List and High Rise.
Yeah.
The McDonald brothers, Kevin and Andrew, who between them have done so many brilliant, important British films the last 30 years. Now they've got a special event where Martin Scorsese's editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, is coming up to Edinburgh to talk about Michael Powell, the legendary British film director of Powell and Pressburger fame.
Of course.
And there's also, as well as all great new films around the world, from Sundance Film Festival and a lot of premieres, British premieres. There's also a special Sean Connery season of all these films that he appeared in as James Bond. And Sean, as you know, is from Edinburgh and was heavily involved with the film festival for quite a number of years before he died. So you can see that they're paying tribute to their past and their roots while still forging forwards into new films and world cinema. And I just think this is going to be a brilliant Edinburgh International Film Festival.
Indeed. Well, we look forward to reflecting on it, and maybe we'll cover it actually while we're there, of course, as well.
But it runs from August the 14th to the 20th.
Yes. So we'll look forward to doing that. Now, Graham, talking of sort of acknowledging the past as well as the present. So I went to The Naked Gun. I'm not saying it is the definitive film in the series. Just to remind everybody, there was Naked Gun 2.5, Naked Gun 33 and a third.
33 and a third.
Leslie Nielsen was the star of those three films. And it's pretty well 3 decades since Zucker Zucker and Abrahams made those films, based actually on Police Squad, a TV series that they did after Airplane, and then set in motion a film series. And you could say, and you could indeed ask, why bring Naked Gun back? So,
but Charles, you and me, when we drove across America from San Francisco to Florida Keys in 3 weeks in 1991, we saw, just when it had been released, Naked Gun 2.5.
We did.
I think we saw, did we see it in LA? Might be in LA.
Yes, I think it was.
And we thought it was absolutely brilliant. I think it actually begins with, this is how funny the Zucker, Abrahams and Zucker team were. It begins with, because although I love Naked Gun films, they're hardly high art. And it begins with unfilmed Zucker, Abrahams and Zucker, which made me laugh straight away. So I should be looking forward to the new Naked Gun, but I'm slightly worried about Liam Neeson. But you've seen it, haven't you?
So I have seen it. Now, Mark Commode's review has been thoroughly negative about it. I think he said he found one laugh, and that was already the one that he knew, basically.
He's about as funny as Joan Didion.
Well, I'm not saying anything like that, Graham, but it is significant that he did that thing that very rarely happens in reviews. He did acknowledge about other people's reaction to a film, and I always feel it's a bit weak to mention how anyone else reacted to anything. because I think you've got to stick to your guns as to why you don't find something funny. Now, I would say that in the audience I went, Saturday night audience, full house, and a typical Saturday night audience at View, lots of popcorn, lots of whatever. It's a popcorn movie. It's light. It's fun. And I can't see anything wrong in that. And yes, you might want exacting standards to meet the levels of before, but the whole point that the initial series was...
Yeah, but Charles, you're doing what Mark Kermode did. Tell me what you thought, not what the audience thought.
I haven't told you what I thought beyond... Okay, you're quite right. I enjoyed it. I don't think that... so if you were to do a list of the Naked Gun movies, it comes in at number 4, not just in timing, but probably in quality. But I think that Liam... No, do not be negative about it, because strange enough, I have watched Naked Gun 2.5 today, and Naked Gun 33 and a third today.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot of laughing. You'll be laughed out, Charles.
What a blissful joy it is just to have some absolute silliness going on. So it's not...
Leslie Nielsen was so good. Leslie Nielsen was so good.
Exactly.
And that's because if you watch Leslie Nielsen's films before Naked Gun, because he was an actor in Hollywood for a long time.
He was an Airplane, of course.
When he plays it straight, he's already funny. He's one of those actors that he's just accidentally funny anyway.
I think Mark Kermode quoted that when he interviewed him, he said that, I think Mark Kermode asked him, did you do anything different once you went into comedy? He said, no, they're just the same acting. It's just that people started to find me funny. Now, I think Liam Neeson has always brought a smile, and he plays it deadpan. It's not quite, I hate the word effortless, because I don't go along with the idea ever of acting being effortless. It's like someone praising someone for a brilliant piece of skill on a football field is effortless. It's not. It's skilled. He isn't quite on that level, but
Does he make it look effortless? Does he make it? Because that's a skill, to make it look effortless.
I think he looks very much at home in it, and I think some of the jokes are a little clunky, some of them are overworked, but there are moments of sheer joy within it as well, and it doesn't even make an attempt to be a 2025 film. In its style, it's very much a 1980s Los Angeles action movie style. And it still plays to having Pamela Anderson fills the slot of Priscilla Presley in it.
Yeah, but Priscilla Presley was actually a really good actress. I'm not so sure about Pamela.
I take that point, and I don't think Pamela's ever going to hit the great heights as an actress. But to say she's serviceable, I think is fair enough within it.
Has it got O.J. Simpson?
So there's one O.J. Simpson gag. I'm not going to say what it is, but it works really well. So I'm not going to spoil it for those who go. Look, it's that other rarity. It's 1 hour 25 minutes. Now, I mean,
that's short. My God,
comedies should be short. Who wants a long comedy? Who wants a long comedy?
You can't laugh for 2.5 hours. That'd kill you.
Maybe where it's David Zucker's very unhappy about it, because the Zuckers aren't involved, and so it is trying to probably spoof. Is a spoof on a spoof. It's not actually as clever as the original spoof was. So it has some detrimental elements to it, but it is still enjoyable, unquestionably. And sometimes you just want to go to a cinema for a laugh and a silly old 90 minutes of fun, and it still does that. I think it's pointless even doing a kind of worthy review about it. It is
you're saying to me, Charles, if the previous Naked Gun films had not existed and you went to this film as a new film, you would have laughed quite a lot. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would.
Well, in that case, that's a good film.
But the question remains, why then make Naked Gun? Why not just make a different film, different title? So that's where you start judging.
I want to make money.
Well, of course, but that's why you then judge it against the others. Right. Inevitably.
Let's move on swiftly, or we're going to run out of time, Charles.
Graham, let's go with The Strange Death of the writer of the 1997 cult classic, another film, Grosse Pointe, which starred, of course, John Cusack and Minnie Driver, probably Minnie Driver's best-known role. Yeah,
well, Grosse Pointe Blank, 1997, a really sharp, witty, dark comedy, really stylish. And it was brilliant because it's sort of like, it was really tightly scripted, tightly edited, tightly made, but it's got a very loose feel. So it's really great. It really works. And John Cusack's great, and Minnie Driver's great, and Dan Aykroyd's great, and Joe Strummer does the music, so the music's great. It's like the end of those great films of the 70s and 80s, which are basically American anti-establishment films and quietly anti-capitalist, which started off with National Lampoon's Animal House and then carried on with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. National Lampoon's Crucifixion with Chevy Chase. And this was the end point of all that. And there's been no film like it since. But the interesting is it was written based on a real event by a writer who wasn't that famous called Tom Jankiewicz. And he got the idea 6 years before the film when he was invited to his 10th high school reunion at his hometown. And he thought, I could do a comedy at this. So he added a new element, which was like a hitman, who's John Cusack, goes back to his school after 10 years for a high school reunion. So it plays out on that. And it was a big hit at the time. Not as big as Naked Gun, but it was a hit.
No.
But then nothing much happened. Tom Jankiewicz didn't do that much.
Nope.
So in 2013, at the age of 49, he was invited to California for a screening of Grosse Pointe Blank. He was invited there to the university that his brother had gone to. And he was invited to give a talk to the class at the university his brother went to. And as he was giving that talk in that old university, he collapsed for no reason and died at the age of 49. Now, I don't think he was assassinated. I don't think John Cusack's character took him out.
No.
But that's a bit weird.
It's a drop dead moment, literally, and that's extraordinary.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, it was. I mean, you've come across that. Is that story even well known at all?
Well, Grosse Pointe Blank's a cult film now.
Yeah, absolutely.
John Cusack's almost a cult actor.
Yes.
So it's a sort of story that if Cusack was a legend or famous like Tom Cruise, if Grosse Pointe Blank was Jaws or Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Titanic, people would know it. But it's not famous enough for people to care enough to dig out that information.
No, well, I knew nothing of that. Graham, so for our last topic, something that frankly just, it's so depressing this is. And we've championed regularly on here about when shops close down, what do you do with the premises? Why aren't they more open to artistic activities, to plays, to art organisations, etc., and also to be done at low rents and low rates, etc. Anyway, I was struck the other day by this story. I'm really pleased to hear that Wilko's, as was, in South Shields, was going to be home to the Market Gallery. If I'm saying past tense, I'm hoping that it will...
Is that South Shields or North Shields? So is it South Shields or North Shields?
Oh, now then, Graham.
Because I know that North Shields has got a cultural quarter, and North Shields has renovated his Exchange Theatre. So in North Shields, they're really going for culture a big way. So if this is South Shields, it means that South Shields is trying to copy North Shields.
South Shields, here we are looking this up frantically. Anyway, the story is that this gallery was about to open, and sorry, not to. Well, Graham, here we are. Vandals destroy. The answer as to where this was is in South Shields. So the situation was
attempted to copy North Shields, yeah.
South Shields. So the gallery was about to open, being run. This is the former Wilko. So what a great idea! Something for the people. Well, yeah.
If you got the band Wilko to play the former Wilko, it'd be absolutely perfect.
I think it's more serious than that, Graham. You want to be flippant? I don't want to be flippant at this point. So Laura Robertson and Theodore Godfrey Cass, who's an Australian, they were about to open the gallery, and he moved into the gallery 4 years of his art. All of it between the Friday and the Tuesday, the gallery was attacked. The walls graffitied with tags. Studio booths damaged. Artwork urinated on, and also fire extinguishers. Artwork smashed and stolen, and the miscreants posting videos of the attack online. To quote Miss Robertson,
dear, that is terrible, Charles. That isn't funny at all.
Well, she refers to it as violating, and absolutely it is. But she said, the aim behind it, this artistic practice, was what we wanted to do for the benefit of the community. And that is, I think, what is so depressing. I haven't seen the videos as to what the miscreants have done on these videos, whether they're trying to make a point, which I would like to know if they are trying to make a point, or if they're just enjoying destruction, which, as we know, in old buildings, smashing windows, people have enjoyed that for centuries. So
I suspect they'll know nothing. I suspect they have no interest in art and know nothing about it. When people are at the bottom and have no hope, they tend to lash out at anything which looks good, because anything that looks good annoys them.
Well, ironically, though, they have used graffiti, which is a form of art, and they've used tags to point out who they are. So they are playing into the art world in their own way.
Also, Charles,
Is there something?
if
Is
they
there something
filmed it,
deeper behind doing something like
yeah,
this? Do you think there's
but
more
if
to
they
it?
filmed it, they could enter it for a Turner Prize if they had some theory behind why they'd filmed it and why they destroyed the art. If they had some artistic theory, they could actually turn it to their artistic advantage.
I mean, previous attacks on galleries we've known have had political motivation. This appears to be an act of vandalism and nothing more than that. I would hope, though, apparently a crowdfunding scheme is already in place, as well as the Northumbrian police investigating. And I think it's really important that actually this gallery still goes ahead and defies the idiocy of people attacking it. And it may be there's a political point behind it. From the point that you make, Graham, is the most likely explanation, I would have thought. But it's interesting that culture and art, which they were trying to do this art for everybody, for the community. Why does that point not come across?
Well, they believed in destruction for everybody. It's a bit like the Sex Pistols anarchy in the UK. It's nihilistic.
Nihilistic. What a negative word that is, Graham.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.